welcome to the Hearts and Minds Partnership launch and celebration of the wonderful VCS perinatal mental health community. My name's Nat and I'm here today with my co-hosts and presenters Joe and Joe. We will be recording today's session just to make you aware. So the purpose of the event is to shine a light on the VCS sector, to explore some themes around value, recognition and collaboration. I'm going to give you a quick summary of our running order today. We'll have an introduction from Joe Bussey to provide context on the partnership's intentions. We'll have a video and we'll be hearing from parents on the impact on engaging with grassroots perinatal mental health services. Joe Love will give us a sneaky peek of the website and the key user journeys. We'll then have a short comfort break, and then there'll be a short video to start the second section, and we'll round off with a panel discussion and hear from leaders in our sector representing different perspectives. If you are using social media, please do post about it using the hashtag HeartsandMinds21. And if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram, we're on HM Partnership. I'm going to hand over to Joe Bussey now, who'll talk you through Hearts and Minds and all the work that's been going on behind the scenes.
Thanks, Nat. And welcome everybody. I'm Joe Bussey, Regional Coordinator for the West Midlands for Hearts and Minds Partnership. And this afternoon, I'm going to set the scene of what we're going to be working through and why we're here today for the launch. The Hearts and Minds Partnership is a collective idea and collaboration of three established grassroots voluntary and community sector, or VCS, perinatal mental health charities. Acacia, Bluebell Care and Smile have over 30 years experience between them of providing support to parents with mild to moderate perinatal mental health needs in their local areas of the country. These three organisations have developed their service offers over many years and are linked by a shared vision to grow the sector to which they belong, seeking to connect it as a collective community. Together, with the ultimate aim of reaching and supporting more families across the country by nurturing the development of the VCS community and fostering a network for collaboration, the idea for the Hearts and Minds Partnership was born. And with support and funding from the National Lottery Community Fund, it became a reality last summer. We know that up to 20% of women experience an impact to their mental health during the perinatal period, with partners also being affected. All of us joined here today from our experience of working for, with and alongside VCS grassroots services, understand the vital local support they provide to parents and families. We'll be hearing more later on about the impact VCS perinatal mental health services make to parents and families' lives and the different forms that support can take. Peer support, one-to-one and group work, workshops, courses, counselling, signposting and advocacy. VCS services are predominantly supporting parents with mild to moderate symptoms, who make up the majority of that 20% and who don't predominantly meet the threshold for specialist clinical support. But despite knowing the huge impact grassroots services make to parents' lives, there's currently no clear data or collated information about perinatal mental health services, VCS services across England. The overarching aim of the partnership is to connect these unique and diverse services as a networked community, to work together to improve the scope, scale and quality of the user-led services available, whilst also identifying gaps and learning from each other, to connect, support and celebrate the perinatal mental health voluntary and community sector. So as a partnership, how do we plan to meet that mission? There are three distinct areas of focus that you can see there on the slide. And we have concentrated initially around those first two objectives. Fundamentally, to understand the sector and to connect, which will all inform the creation of an interactive map of services and the partnership website. Families and practitioners will be able to use these tools to access resources and to signpost to local grassroots VCS services near them. Shortly, my colleague Joe Love will be able to give you a preview of what we've been working on over the last 6 months to make the map a reality. And we've also been working on scoping current provision across perinatal mental health VCS, reaching out to existing services, understanding what they're working on, and what support they offer, identifying the gaps as well to connect as well as connecting with healthcare professionals, teams, and to establish a baseline of services across England. We've also been making connections with VCS organisations, local and national, big and small, reaching out to different communities to identify the support that's available, to be able to start to populate the map. We've worked in collaboration with healthcare colleagues as well, making sure that that has been key to raise awareness of the partnership and also forge links to enhance the connections between the statutory and voluntary sectors. Reaching out to groups and services has meant that we have started to work on growing the foundations of the perinatal mental health VCS community, looking at the central objective to develop trusted spaces to enable VCS groups to share and learn from each other, and enabling a collective voice for the grassroots perinatal mental health sector. We are excited that we've launched the Conversation Space, a monthly forum for grassroots groups and services to connect, share ideas, problem solve, and grow together. Already, in a few months, this forum has generated connections and partnerships and will continue to inform the development of further support, resources, and learning. We hope that the Hearts and Minds community will become a voice for the sector, and we're proud to have already been able to represent the sector at national events. And as we continue to build connections and populate the map, the next stage of our work will look to develop and deliver training to support services to grow. We will develop a suite of training and resources for grassroots perinatal mental health VCS organisations to be able to access at whatever stage of growth they may be at. Initial scoping of that training content is underway, which is being led by conversations with VCSs, parents, and healthcare colleagues. Our thanks go out to those who have already been part of the conversation space so far. It's been integral to understanding the needs of the sector to develop that training brief. And we've also started initial work with the Motherhood Group, Prosperities and Roshni to ensure that cultural competency is fundamental to training, as well as making ongoing connections with groups and diverse communities for their insight in growing the VCS perinatal mental health community further. So creating a network with our stakeholders is key, and developing the grassroots VCS perinatal mental health sector is at the core of the Hearts and Minds partnership. We recognise that the voluntary and community sector is part of a wider system of support. There's many services across sectors are working hard to achieve positive outcomes for families. Developing interconnected and interactive relationships with VCS organisations, statutory partners and families is crucial to help us all improve the support that is available to parents and families when they need it. Development of the Hearts and Minds partnership is collaborative and co-produced with all stakeholders, and this will continue to be central to the development of the partnership and our work going forward. And that infographic there really sums up talking about the network with stakeholders. We are all part of the support net that are around families at this important time in their lives. If links in that net are not as strong as they could be, ultimately the impact is felt on parents' well-being and on their recovery journey. We all have unique and diverse support and expertise to offer and provide, and together we are stronger, and the support net around families is stronger as a result. The Hearts and Minds partnership aims to establish the grassroots perinatal mental health VCS as a key link in that integrated support net for families, through connection, support and celebration of the sector. That was a whistle-stop tour of what we've been working over the last few months, and a taste of what we've got planned going forward. There's lots of work going on, and we want everybody to join us on that journey. Most importantly, how we connect further for the benefit of parents and families we are supporting and the VCS services that are delivering that support. So with that, I will pass back over to Nat now, who will introduce the first of this afternoon's lived experience films.
Thank you so much for that, Jo. We're now going to have a short video featuring parents who shared their very honest reflections of their experiences of perinatal mental health challenges. So just a gentle warning there about sensitive content, and how they each reached out for support at such a vulnerable time in their lives. This video illustrates the impact on lives. It's so important that we capture this and look at the validity of testimonials in the whole value piece around qualitative feedback.
So during my pregnancy, I've been quite anxious, but after my son was born, that anxiety really took hold of me, and I was sort of paralysed by it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do the things that I would normally do. Every time I went out, I was just constantly seeing danger and seeing ways that my baby could get hurt or become ill, and it had just taken over my life. I wasn't really living life anymore. I'd just become really fearful and scared.
I was sort of feeling inadequate all of the time and crying a lot and constantly Googling like symptoms of my daughter. I also had a chat with my husband and my mum. They both sat me down and sort of said they were very concerned about me, that I was crying a lot of the time and that I felt was quite angry. And yeah, they were just really worried. Along with the Edinburgh score that I did with the health visitor, made me realise that actually I needed support and that I perhaps was suffering with an illness.
Feeling in a rut for a little while, and I thought it would be beneficial to meet like-minded mothers so we could share our experiences.
So I didn't really think that I needed support. The doctor offered me some antidepressants, which I turned down because I didn't agree with her. I didn't think that I was suffering with postnatal depression, but she did tell me and that she thought I should self-refer to a charity.
I realised that I needed support pretty early on. I wasn't happy, I wasn't enjoying being a mum, and this newborn bubble that I was supposed to be in, I just wasn't in. Every day waking up was a huge effort.
Because I just wasn't feeling right. I knew that I was being quite emotional, overwhelmed, really tired, and I just didn't have any interest in anything.
We knew we needed to get help because we weren't enjoying being parents. My husband was suffering with anxiety, which isn't something that he had had before becoming a parent, and I was scoring quite high on the depression scale when the health visitor measured me, which isn't something that I'd suffered with before becoming a parent.
I attended a group run by the organisation once a week. While I was there, I had some support one-to-one from a befriender who would just chat to me about how I was doing, what was going on for me and my family. And then when I've been there a while, I started to do some group work with them, which was really great. I got to chat to some of the mums about different topics each week, which was really helpful. They're really great as well at just providing some advocacy with my GP and signposting to other services as well. So it was a really positive experience.
Through the group I was offered peer support, which I found really useful, and also one-to-one counselling, which was good as I was able to talk to somebody totally impartial about exactly how I was feeling, knowing that that was confidential.
We met in small groups. We were there to creatively explore our feelings and experiences of our motherhood journeys.
They decided that I'd be okay going into the group sessions to do some cognitive behavioural therapy, and that was a set course of 12 weeks, and it was nice hearing lots of different experiences from the other women in the group. There was only a few of us. I had the one-to-one support, the phone calls, the group work with some books which I still use now, which I still refer to now, and the support of all the other mums. They offer a dad's service, and whether dads were okay and whether they would like to access anything extra.
The support groups that we did go to was a massive help for us, and possibly would not have got through the first few weeks, months, even years without them.
I received group work support. There was me and another two mums, and it was a safe place for me, and it made me realise that actually it wasn't just me who was going through this, and there was other mums in a similar situation. So they offered me group work support, and my daughter was in a creche at the time, so which meant I didn't have to think about childcare.
I was matched with a peer supporter who is also a mum. It just so happened that she's more experienced than me, so that was really, really helpful. And my husband was invited to a dad support group, which he still attends. I attended a craft club, which was supported with a creche, and it was fantastic to get some time for me. It was really refreshing to get some time to do something just for me, and know that he was safe and that I didn't need to worry about him.
Thank you to all the parents who contributed to this video. It was so powerful, I'm sure you'll agree, and really quite moving to listen to. I'm now going to hand over to Jo Love, who will be inviting you to have a sneaky peek of our new website by talking through very specific user journeys. Over to you, Jo.
Thanks, Nat. So, hi, I'm Jo Love, and I'm the Regional Coordinator of the Hearts and Minds Partnership. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to give you a little sneaky preview of our very soon to be finalised website. So before we begin, I wanted to say that the site is still in development mode, and therefore what you're seeing today is not quite the final website that will hopefully go live in the next few weeks, but it is very much almost there. And of course, we will let you all know when that happens, so you can all have a go and nosy at the final site for yourselves. As you can see, this is our wonderfully designed homepage, and as we move down, you'll see the various sections about who we are and what our mission is. And we've also included stories and parents' information to make this space not only welcoming, but informative to families too. On that note, and talking about resources, if we scroll back up to the top, we've made sure that the site, above and beyond the map of local services, is also packed with lots of other links and support for parents. There are pages for parents to access help and advice, find answers to common questions, as well as lots of national services, and of course, crucially, the crisis services, meaning the whole website is a really rich resource for parents. The website services 3 distinct users: the parent, the healthcare professional, and the VCS community. And as you can see, we have an icon for each. I am not going to take you through the parent journey today because it is actually very similar to the healthcare professional journey, which I'll take you through now. But once the website is live, please do go and have an explore and see what a parent would see and how they would access the map. Clicking on the healthcare professional icon here on the homepage, you will see it takes us through to a healthcare professional focus page. And I know we've got a bit of a mixed audience here today, but if you are a healthcare professional, midwife, health visitor, GP, who finds themselves sat with a parent who wants to know what local perinatal VCS support is available in their area, you would head to this pink box, enter either an address, a postcode, a name of town or area where they live, or where they would like to access services. And we've entered Bath here, and we get various dummy results pop up, both as pins on the map and on the left-hand side of the page as a list. The map is really easy and intuitive to use, as it works, looks, feels a lot like Google Maps, allowing the user to zoom in and move around the page should they need to. If we take a look at the results here on the left-hand side, we can take one of these and you'll see it correlates to a pin on the map. The user can also find out more about the services or organisation by clicking on the View More button. And as you can see, more information is held here about what the service offers and to whom and where, as well as if they have any specific services that they wish to highlight, such as groups or offerings to young parents, for baby loss, LGBTQ+, or services for partners and or dads, for example. Moving back to the main results list on the left-hand side that this user got, if we scroll right down to the bottom, as well as the listed local services, there's also some alternative options with a little bit about IAPT and also a reminder about some of the pathways for parents falling into the moderate and severe categories. For although the map is very focused on the VCS services who hold the mild to moderate parents and doesn't map any of the statutory services, we wanted to include a reference to them here for completeness and for signposting purposes. As a quick aside, if we had followed the parent icon to view the map, at the bottom of their search results here, in the alternatives options section, the parents would also see links to national resources and signposting to speak to their healthcare professional. So even if there weren't any results in a particular area, parents will still be signposted to support. The next clip, we're going to look at the VCS community page. We're back on the home page again, and as I explained previously, I'm not going to take you through the parent journey because it looks very similar to the healthcare professional one. Instead, this time I'll be showing you what happens when we click on the VCS icon. Essentially, this is the homepage for the VCS perinatal mental health community. It's where organisations can find all the information about how to feature on the map, as well as how to sign up to our charter. And once the website is live, please do go and have a read of our charter, because we're encouraging as many people as possible to sign it, since it really does capture the spirit of the Hearts and Minds Partnership and what we're trying to build within our community. Also, as a little bonus, when you do sign up, we automatically send you a wonderful little graphic that then you can use on your own website and socials. Scrolling down, as you can see, there are all the benefits of joining our community, as well as featuring on the map and signing up to the charter. And the events section is also worth keeping an eye on, because events are a big part of our continuing work. Today aside, we've also been hosting since the beginning of the year some really well attended monthly virtual meetups for the perinatal mental health VCS community. And there will be more events and workshops coming down the line, both virtual ones and hopefully soon in-person events, which we'd love you all to be involved with. We really believe that events are such a brilliant way to connect with each other, learn from one another, and such a great way to create a strong and vibrant voice for our community. The news and update section is currently under construction, but is going to be a really vibrant area of the website, full of news from our sector and also celebrating your wins as well, and as showcasing great practice from within our community. Moving down the page a little further, you can see the training and support area. And we do recognise that there are so many brilliant training offerings already out there, but what we want to create here in time is our own tailored and specific training for our community, really focusing on the practical support in growing and sustaining a grassroots service in the perinatal mental health voluntary and community sector. So if this is something that you're interested in, certainly watch this space here. And the very final journey through the website I wanted to take you on looks at how an organisation would apply to appear on the map. Before I take you through that process, I wanted to speak just for a moment about why there is this process and why filling out the form I'll show you in just a moment doesn't mean that organisations will automatically be included on the map. The intention of the map is to signpost vulnerable parents as well as healthcare professionals to safe, inclusive, quality VCS services. So therefore, we've devised a self-assessment checklist that the organisations themselves will fill out to review key criteria, and afterwards they will all then have a conversation with ourselves before being featured on the map. And while we want to stress that we're not a regulator or an industry policeman, but we do want to ensure to the best of our ability that organisations on the map are safe, inclusive and quality services. And we feel by having this two-tiered approach where organisations themselves demonstrate where they're at, as well as having a conversation with us, allows us to do that. With all that said, let's have a little look at the form. So starting again on the homepage and clicking through to the VCS community page, again, but this time actually clicking on the feature on map section. As you can see from this next page, before they begin, we give the organisation a rough breakdown in terms of what the form entails, how much time they will need, as well as the really handy ability to download the forms in advance, just to ensure that they've got all the relevant information to hand before clicking Let's Start. We do ask that everyone who is on the map signs up to the charter, but if you've already signed it, as you can do this at any time, then we say that you can skip through this bit. And for ease right now, we're going to say that we've already signed the charter. And now we've landed on the actual form to be filled out. I'm not going to take you through all of it, but I did want to draw your attention to the checkbox matrix or self-assessment right at the bottom of the page that each organisation will complete. And as you can see, that there's information here about how they safeguard their services, how they manage their information, so data protection, etc., how they support their volunteers and staff, as well as where they are with diversity and inclusion. There is one more page to this form, which I won't show you, as essentially it's where the organisation enters all the information about their service that will then appear on the map should they be included. And we saw all of that in the results when we looked at the map earlier on. So that really concludes a whistle-stop tour of what I wanted to show you on the website today. And as you can see, it's almost there and we are almost ready to launch. But there's just a little bit of tidying up and a little bit of content that we need to populate. And of course, we need to get some real life VCS services onto the map. So we will be letting you know in due course when that happens. And hopefully it will be very, very soon.
Welcome back to the second part of our launch event and the celebration of the sector. Following on from the film earlier where we heard from parents about their journey and how they felt and reached out to VCS services, we're now going to hear a second video. In this montage, the same parents will share how they found the support they received and the impact that it had on their lives.
I just lost so much of who I was and the person I am and of the mum that I am. Yeah, it's just amazing to see the change that has happened and through the support that I had. And I think that it enabled me just to take back control of my anxiety. And I do still sometimes worry, I do sometimes feel anxious, but it doesn't control me and it doesn't stop me living my life to the full and being the mum I want to be now.
So for me, the impact of the support I received was huge. And as soon as I went to group for the first time, I immediately felt I wasn't alone and I was surrounded by other parents who were feeling in a similar way to me or had done in the past. And that for me was really beneficial. And by the end of my treatment and time at the group, I felt much more like my old self.
It's given me an opportunity to process some quite major parts of my life, really, reflecting on positives and negatives at times. I've realised that no two journeys are the same. We're all individuals just working out our way through.
The impact of the support was incredible. I became less snappy with my children and my other half. I became much more relaxed and I started to enjoy the time with the children even more because it didn't feel quite so pressured. And I still look back and use some of the techniques when I feel like I've gone a little bit of a dip, especially during the pandemic.
So the support helped me immensely. It was one day of the week where I went to a group and I felt safe, I felt secure, I felt okay to be open and tell people how I really felt. I had just a time where I could be me. It was definitely a safe place of mine to go. It helped me talk to my husband more. The support group even gave my husband support as well, not just me. We were helped as a family.
I still had bad days, don't get me wrong, but after doing I think it was 6 weeks group work sessions, the confidence to be able to do things, listening to other moms and how they did it, and or if they thought similar things to you, it just kind of gave you the boost, really, that actually it's not just you and it's normal. I could tell that I was getting better because I started to look forward to the future. It was nice knowing that there was other people going through similar stuff and it wasn't just me. And I think in the group I could say what I wanted to and not feel that I was being judged.
It was just a breath of fresh air. The overwhelming sense of relief that we had when someone sat down with me and listened to how I was feeling was huge.
I simply knew that the support was right for me because I wanted to go again. Every single week, it was a day of the week that I looked forward to and I wanted to go. If I could have gone every day, I would have gone every day. I also had other offerings of counselling as well, so I knew that there was other options that they could help me with, and they gave me just a huge amount of support.
I knew that the support I was offered was right for me, because although I was really nervous at arriving and going to group for the first time, pretty much as soon as I got there I was offered a drink and a decent biscuit, not like the rubbish ones, and also sat down with a friendly face, somebody who was really welcoming and offered to listen to me without making me feel judged, and also knowing that they had that lived in experience as well, that they'd been in a similar place to where I was at the time, and actually they'd come out the other side and had recovered. A lot of my issues were around sort of anxiety of leaving my baby and panicking about what might happen to her when I wasn't there. With the counselling as well that I received through the group, I found that really beneficial because I was able to take my baby with me.
All of our groups are full of warmth and kindness and compassion. We've been meeting both face to face and online, and it has opened up in a whole new community for me through lockdown. The opportunities it has given me have really given me space for my mental health.
The support was really great because going to the centre was probably the place that I would go each week where I'd feel the most safe. It was somewhere that I could get to with my family, and I knew that I'd get a warm welcome. I knew that I'd be treated with just compassion and kindness, and be looked after.
I remember at the time being really worried about whether group work sessions were going to be held, because I didn't personally want it to be too close to home, and she made sure that the session that I could access where it was, made sure that there was a creche available for my daughter. These little acts of kindness really helped me in my darkest time. It was a non-judgmental. Everybody at the organisation is really, really kind.
I knew that the support was right for me from the overwhelming sense of relief that I had after my first session with a peer supporter. She came to my home. She made me feel like what I was going through was not insurmountable and that things would get better.
It was clear from the first correspondence that I had with the charity that I knew that they were perfect for me. They're so open, they're so friendly, they're so comforting, empathetic, sympathetic. They help me realise that even if I wasn't on the verge of doing something awful, that I'm still justifiably having the support. I was struggling, and to have that support there is unbelievable. It's so priceless. Any way you needed them, email, phone, in person, they were perfect.
Excellent leaders within our field who are going to be forming our panel today. I'm going to invite each panel member to say a few succinct words about who they are and their roles. So firstly, over to you, Vicky Hook.
Well, hi everyone, my name's Vicky and I'm a Director of Acacia based in Birmingham in the West Midlands. Acacia is also one of the charity partners of the Hearts and Mind Partnership, and I'm also a mum with lived experience of using perinatal mental health services.
Thank you very much, Vicky. And now over to you, Rob Ewers.
Hi, I'm Rob Ewers. I'm a registered nurse and I'm the Operations Director for Acacia Family Support. I've got my own lived experience of paternal mental health problems.
Thanks, Rob. And now over to you to introduce yourself, Sasha Barber.
Hi everyone, I'm Sasha. I work as perinatal mental health lead. I'm a mental health nurse at Southmead Maternity in Bristol, and most importantly, I'm the Chair of Trustees for Bluebell Care.
Thank you, Sasha. And now to Sandra Igwe.
Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Igwe. I am the founder of the Motherhood Group, a social enterprise to support the Black maternal experience. I also have lived experience. I'm a mother of two. I'm also the trustee of Birthrights Charity and the co-chair of their National Inquiry into Racial Injustice in Maternity Care.
Thank you, Sandra. And over to you, Dr. Joe Black.
Hi, I'm Jo Black. I'm the current chair of the perinatal faculty at the Royal College of Psychiatrists. I'm a perinatal psychiatrist working in a community team in Devon, and I really value the quality of this conversation and the input that the VCS can give to women across all the spectrum of problems with mental health in the maternity period.
Great, thank you, Jo. And finally, over to Anne-Marie Chumase from the Lottery.
Hi there, I'm Anne-Marie Chumase, and I'm a funding manager at the National Lottery Community Fund. I sit within the partnerships team, and we fund Hearts and Mind at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much for being with us today. So just to give you a quick overview of how the panel is going to work, we've been listening to our community via our regular conversation space that Jo Bussey mentioned earlier. These have been regular online meetups for our community to share and to ask really pertinent questions for each panel representative, given their respective outlook. We're also going to invite you at this time to post any questions you may have on the chat, and given time limitations, we will try and put forward some of those questions to the most appropriate panel member. So I'm now going to turn to my first question to Vicky. So Vicky, we've heard today, and we know from our own experiences of running services within communities, that VCS organisations have a significant impact on the lives of families. How do you think we can work together to articulate that value in a meaningful way for funders and for commissioners?
Thanks, Nat. I think it's a really important question for our sector. And when I was thinking about my response, drawing on my own experience of running Acacia and also the conversations we've had as part of the partnership over the past 12 months, I think I wanted to sort of talk about three different things. I think, first of all, it's important that we understand some of the context, so some of the challenges that are currently facing the VCS sector and funders and commissioners. Secondly, I think it's important that we look at how we're currently articulating our value before finally thinking a little bit about some specific tangible actions that we're planning to take as a partnership. But I think at the heart of all of this is the fact that we are trying to tell a really difficult story, because ultimately describing what we do and the impact and value of a service that goes on to help prevent a crisis is always going to feel harder and be more challenging than articulating the value of services that respond to a crisis. So it's really important that we get people to understand the depth and breadth of what it is that we do. Because as we've seen today, and as we know, the perinatal VCS sector really matters and changes people's lives. And we've seen that so much over the past 12 months. And we know this ourselves, but how can we articulate that better to funders, commissioners, policymakers? And I think we need to start off by asking ourselves the question, do we really understand what it is that funders and commissioners are looking for and what they need? And that response in itself can feel quite overwhelming and quite confusing, because like almost all charities in our country, our VCS sector is made up of this incredible, thriving community of small to medium grassroots organisations, all offering different service models. That's one of our sector's superpowers, but it also creates a bit of a challenge, because we know that commissioning processes over the past, recent years are increasingly disadvantaging smaller grassroots organisations, as we're seeing increasing large generic contracts with multiple portfolios. And we're also seeing, we know that the amount of funding received and applied for is quite often comes with a disproportionate level of monitoring, information and information requirements. So we're working within a challenging context, and it's so important more than ever that we think about how we articulate the huge value that our sector brings, so that we're seen as a vital part of every area's perinatal pathway, because if we don't articulate that value collectively, I think there's a danger that there can be gaps in funders and commissioners' knowledge that arise that's too often filled with assumptions, incorrect assumptions about who we are and what we do, such as the notion maybe that we only deliver peer support, or that we only do the soft and fluffy stuff, when we all know ourselves that we're holding some incredibly complex cases of families experiencing really difficult social complex issues that goes far above and beyond up the pathway of mild to moderate. So part of the reason why our partnership came together was so that we could help organisations articulate their own value and our collective value as well with a coherent voice. I think most of us would agree that we're already pretty good at demonstrating individual value. So that's the impact that we have on families' lives, the change, the journeys of recovery, the love, the support that people have from fantastic organisations. It sounds like we offer really good biscuits as well, which is important. But that's only really telling, or is that only really telling half the story? Because as a community, we now need together, we must come together to provide evidence, research and data using some of the more practical measures, the sort of economic, the monetary, the financial, which is often used to assess the value of our sector. So that's not easy, but we've seen over and over again that it's this type of information and campaigns that are using these measures that are often used to inform decision making around perinatal mental health funding and decision making and influencing policy. I think as a partnership, we're really keen to seek funding for a specific report on the economic impact of our perinatal VCS sector. We're going to be sharing the lessons that we've learned, and we're also going to be developing and delivering training for the VCS organisations on the ground so that they're able to start demonstrating their own value and articulating their own value alongside our collective value. That's really not easy for organisations when you're running your service for free, you're working every minute of the day helping families, but it's so important that we support organisations to get that right because it's such a vital part of long-term sustainability. So just to finish off, demonstrating and articulating value means something different to everybody, but it's so important that the smaller VCS sector has a seat at the table when long-term conversations and there's national planning around perinatal mental health services when they're being developed, because we can be such an asset to those conversations because our lived experience models means that we can help develop services in a way that truly reflect the grassroots and needs of families on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicky, for such a rich response. There's so much content in there to work with, and hopefully some of that funding stuff will pick up a little bit later. I'm now going to move to Rob to ask, we know that dads and partners experience perinatal mental health challenges. How do you think we can ensure that they have access to support in their communities to meet those very specific needs?
Well, I think we've got a real opportunity at this very moment, haven't we? With the long-term plan now having identified partner support. And so I think the challenge for the third sector is to make the most of this opportunity while it's there. And I think making the most of the opportunity is about partnering with statutory services. We know, don't we, and we've talked about the third sector brings a lot of value. We've got flexibility is a huge strength. Our community connection, lived experience, and the involvement of peer. So we bring a lot to the table. I think it's also worth noting, isn't it, when we're talking about paternal mental health, that it is actually the VCS that's been leading on this now for over a decade, and so we've got a lot of expertise and experience in the whole area. So I think obviously the long-term plan, it's focused on partners of mums accessing specialist services, and it's looking at a couple of goals there to ensure that those partners have an evidence-based assessment and that they're also signposted to appropriate services. As we all know, there's I think there's a little bit more to it than that. So with those are boxes that may be being focused on, but we've not got to forget about engagement and engaging those dads if we want to make it meaningful. Is one thing to provide an assessment and some signposting, maybe a leaflet or a phone number. In reality, certainly for most dads, that leaflet and that phone number is probably going to be something else that ends up jammed in the glove compartment of the car and forgotten about. And so, I think a big part of it is actually achieving that engagement. And I think for us, the model that we've implemented in Birmingham with the specialist team is the idea of dad's peer support workers. We introduced that model for BAME mums a couple of years ago in Birmingham. And so Acacia and 2 other third sector organisations, which are Approachable Parenting and APP, we provide peer support workers to work across and bridge between our third sector organisations and work within those specialist teams to focus on engagement. And we know that model has been really successful, which is why we've chosen to implement the same model for dads and partners. Obviously, we need to keep in view, like as we've already said, that the long-term plan, that the focus of that is for partners of mums who are accessing specialist services. And again, we know, don't we, as a VCS organisation working in perinatal mental health, that most mums don't necessarily access specialist services for adult within primary care and in the third sector. And so obviously their partners are not part of that long-term plan goal at the moment. Also, you've got dads and partners who develop their own perinatal mental health problems when their wife maybe doesn't, and I was one of those. Having said that, this is a huge undertaking to provide support, to recognise and provide support for partners. And so I think we have got to recognise that we've got to take one step at a time and make the most of the opportunities in front of us, like I said. So, at the moment, because of that focus within the long-term plan, there's plenty of perinatal teams and with it, sort of the perinatal sector generally across the country is looking for ways to achieve what needs to be achieved and to implement this. And so I think, it's a time when really we can come together and utilise both our strengths in partnership. I think that there's lots of benefits to partnering that way for the third sector. Obviously, it brings additional funding in, which we can always do with extra additional funding. But I think that the other things are, better integration of pathways if you're working together, and those pathways becoming smoother. The flexibility, like we said, and cost effectiveness of the third sector means that very often we can get things up and running and implement things quite quickly. And I think another benefit is that our relationship grows between statutory services and the third sector when we're delivering things in partnership like that. So our mutual trust grows, our understanding and the relationship grows, which has got to be, I think, a really good thing. So yeah, my take-home message from that would be, I think it's really important if you've already got good relationship between as an third sector organisation and statutory perinatal mental health services to approach the people that to look at where there's opportunities for partnering to achieve this. I think for commissioners and that perinatal sector, if the people representing those here today who haven't got those relationships with their local sort of third sector organisations, I would strongly advise you to approach them and to open that dialogue. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say about that, really. I think an important thing is us sharing our expertise and our knowledge as a third sector as well. I recognise there are some very small VCS organisations out there who actually the idea of approaching local statutory services and having this conversation, thinking about how to implement that's quite a big thing. But this forum that we've got now is so important because we can share information and we can share expertise between us, and anybody that wants to ask us any questions about our dad's service and the partnership working, then please get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob, and so useful for your unique perspective. There's some real key words that are coming out of today around collaboration and working together, and integration is another one. And I'm going to use that seamlessly to move on to the next question, which will be posed to Sasha. Now, Sasha, we see that when VCS services are truly embedded in the clinical landscape, it works really well as a model. How do you think we can encourage both healthcare professionals and VCS services to work in a really integrated way, each recognising the role that they play in this multifaceted support for families?
Okay, thank you. Just to say, I've got a really snory dog underneath my feet, so apologies if it's buffering a little bit. So I think at times we can really overcomplicate things. So I'm going to keep this really simple. I think that if we mirrored the approach that we aspire to when we work with families, it would be a really good start. And do you know what? I think the voluntary sector do a much better job at doing this than health and social care, if I'm really honest, and I can say that because I work within it. So I think it's around building relationships, as we know, having a shared understanding of each other, recognising that working together will hopefully lead to a richer, more meaningful experience and better outcomes for the family who absolutely should be at the centre. So I've worked with Bluebell Care for around 7 years now. And when I send a referral in, I would say it's a respectful referral. It's knowledge of what they do, their expertise, and I can manage families' expectations. I'm not sending a referral to fill a gap, which I think is absolutely what can happen within the voluntary sector and other services as well, but I know it does happen a lot. And we know that scattergun approach, when you hear, you might be in a meeting, I'm sure you've all kind of heard, when you send a referral to lots of different agencies in the hope that one may fit. And I think when there's that lack of understanding, it wastes time, it builds frustrations between services, and it really impacts on the woman, because often the services will decline the referral because that woman may not meet the threshold, she's not unwell enough, she's too unwell, and that woman is just left thinking that no one can help her. So I think we have an absolute duty of care to know who we are working with. And again, I'm going to make it simple in thinking about how can we make that happen. So training together. So I work with the Institute of Health Visiting as well, and I help run their 2-day perinatal mental health training course. And it's always multi-agency, and we can't underestimate the value. I mean, the wealth of experience that is in that room, I've learned so much. So I often go to Bluebell's training, Bluebell comes to my training, we share expertise. It's also about kind of those monthly meetups. So just I've met with 2 voluntary organisations, and I'll be honest with you, we came together because there was a lack of communication, and often when there's a lack of communication, there's miscommunication, and there were some challenges to kind of resolve. But at the end of it, what we've decided is to meet monthly, so this doesn't happen again. And I'm just kind of kicking myself a little because really I should have put that in place a couple of years ago. So there's always learning, and I think it's about acknowledging that we don't always get it right. There's also just, building those relationships, having a tea or coffee with a peer support worker, someone from another agency. That time is never wasted. Some of my best work, I think, has been done over a tea. And when we work together, it gives us a greater sense of the gaps. And I don't think we should be trying to fill them. And it's about valuing the expertise that you have. So ultimately, I think just kind of working alongside, as colleagues, I see you as an extended work family. And we know families can be complicated, especially when we don't talk. We make assumptions about roles in that family. But I'm absolutely of a firm belief that sitting down with a cup of tea and building those relationships, getting to know each other and understanding the role is a catalyst to kind of really wonderful things happening. So the ultimate answer, I suppose, is tea, really. And we know all the things that we have to do. As I said, it's about not making it complicated. It's just about investing that time and knowing it's never wasted.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I really love the analogy you used there of an extended family, which is all about inclusivity as well and accessibility. So that kind of takes me into the next question posed to Sandra. So Sandra, we know that there's work to be done to ensure both the VCS and statutory perinatal mental health services are inclusive and they're accessible. What do you think are the practical steps that can be taken to enable Black women to access inclusive, culturally sensitive services in their local areas?
Yeah, thank you so much, Natalie, for that. And yes, I completely agree. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of making sure that Black mothers have adequate access to care that's culturally sensitive. As mentioned before, I do have lived experience, but unfortunately for myself, I didn't get the support that I needed. So I was actually undiagnosed with postnatal depression. And many reasons why Black mothers or mothers from ethnic minority communities are reluctant to actually access the support that's very readily out there is because we don't believe that they're right for us or that they're tailored towards us and our own personal needs and our own cultural values and norms. And so when I say, how can we take practical steps? Number one, ask the right questions. Ask a mother. Don't be afraid to ask, where are you from? Are you born and raised in the UK? What are your cultural values? What are your religious themes? What does your faith say? And when you get to know a mother for who she is and also her background, because as you know, background, religious, culture, traditions have a massive impact in the way that a mother, responds to care and responds to services. And also feeling like a mother doesn't believe that she's supposed to, access a particular service, because when you go there and you don't see multicultural members of staff, nobody looks like that mother, there's no diverse imagery, it definitely sends a loud message that this service is not for me. So subtle changes like inclusion and including Black mothers, Black pregnant women, ethnic minority Black and other groups in their marketing collateral, on their websites, on their flyers, on their leaflets, sends a soft message that you too are also welcome, that you too belong here as well. A lot of mothers in our community definitely feel arguably unsafe in these environments. So as you know, a safe environment or a place where a mother feels like she can share her challenges definitely creates an environment where a mother feels, welcome, and she feels like she's able to tell the truth. And if you don't feel like you're able to tell the truth, then there's no point in accessing that service. So how can you make a place feel more safe for a mother? Getting somebody that understands her culture, that can relate to her circumstance. And that's one of the reasons why I was so passionate about starting the motherhood group 5 years ago, because I was very frustrated at how many spaces and groups were not really understanding my culture, the Nigerian culture that my mother passed down to me. Simple things like when I gave birth, I had to stay indoors for a number of weeks, and that wasn't really understood by my white counterparts or the services that I was trying to access. A lot of Black mothers also believe that we are made to be strong and carry all burdens, and so therefore we're also reluctant to access services because we do feel like it's quite shameful. We feel quite guilty. We feel like we're letting our family down because we're not a good enough parent. And so also tackling some of the stigma attached to perinatal mental health services and what mental health actually means. So understanding that a mother has to face other barriers, like first and foremost, understanding what mental health challenges are when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum period, and then working with her slowly to kind of go through that difficult stage of acceptance. And then the next step is to then getting support. What else would I say? Definitely family has a lot to do with it. So when you're speaking to a mother, also understand that her family, her partner, her aunties, her cousins, her mother may also have an impact in her decision to want to get support. So maybe also speaking to her family as well to make sure that they're all on the same page, on the page as well. Also listening to a mother. So not only are you asking a mother, but listening to her if she's, raising concerns and raising challenges. Listen, lots of, as you guys know, that Black mothers are more likely to have complications in their pregnancy and as a result die. Lots of mothers in our community are carrying that trauma and that fear from their pregnancy to their birthing experience. And then, of course, postpartum period, which unfortunately does have a knock-on effect on trust. If you don't trust the service, how are you supposed to use it, access it, or relate to it? So understanding that a mother may fear and have already fears and already have trust issues when accessing services. So definitely clinicians, groups, understanding how culture plays a part and how you can use that to empower a mother, make her feel more confident in you and your services, and making her feel more welcome and included by changing and adapting marketing collateral and spaces where she might not feel welcome at first.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I think it sounds like it's really important that we keep listening and that we keep learning, and that the cultural sensitivity is such a critical part of this. And we're looking to embrace that within our training modules that we develop in the future in terms of the cultural competency piece of work. And thanks so much for that. I'm now going to turn to Dr. Jo Black to ask, how important is the role of VCS in meeting the needs of parents who don't quite make that threshold to access specialist perinatal mental health services?
Thanks, Nat. So I'm going to, anyone who knows me knows I have a habit of doing this. I'm going to answer a slightly different question. And the reason I'm going to answer a slightly different question is because I think that there's a myth that there are women who are deserving of specialist mental health services and women who fall below that threshold who are somehow less deserving or whose needs are not so serious. And I think that's a kind of a false situation. So when I'm sitting in clinic with a woman and I'm getting to know her, and she's either in the throes of a horrible episode or perhaps she's beginning to recover out of it, part of what she and I are thinking together about is what she is like when she's well and what keeps her well. So a woman who says to me, I use crafting to make me feel like myself, or I enjoy exercise and that's what I've always done in the past. My mind's already going to what community could she sit within to find her tribe when she's through this crisis, right? So that it's not just women who are at that lower, kind of this myth of the lower end of being poorly. There are women who've been through serious episodes and then they reach a spot where they need to find themselves again and reconnect with the things that matter to them. And that might be around their previous interests and the things that they use to stay well, or the things that they use to stay energized and feel like themselves. Or it might be around women's want to find out more about their specific diagnosis, such as if they've had an episode of debilitating OCD or postpartum psychosis. They might want to explore that within a community that really gets it. Or it might be about as Sandra was saying, it might be about women who felt a little bit disenfranchised in their receipt of care because their culture or their race was not fully taken into account, and they may want to embrace the next bit of their recovery or sit within their recovery within a community who really gets it. So slightly to answer the slightly different question, I think in order for the VCS to be as valued in the whole pathway as it needs to be, we need to kind of get away from this idea that either some people sit within specialists and some people sit outside of specialists, because actually you guys do a better job than we do at parts of the pathway for all of those women. And I can deliver the kind of the medical interventions and the really complex risk assessments. And basically, my role in the pathway is to hold hope with a woman and give her the intervention she needs to get through that crisis. But her recovery is only just beginning there, and the refinding herself and refinding her community and feeling strong again, feeling well again, finding her confidence as a woman, feeling her confidence as a mother is not my area of expertise, where I think it's a vital part of recovery from a perinatal mental health episode. And I think that's the unique place that the diversity of the VCS community plays, because wherever a woman wants to start, the ideal place is to start is within the community that she wants to find. And I think looking at your video, you could see women describing finding a tribe who they could relax with and they could breathe with and they could be honest and use humor with, because they could all get it. So for the women who I work with, which is I guess the women who are experiencing the most acute episodes and most debilitating from a medical point of view, they also we need to be including them in all of the evaluations about where your services and your expertise help them in their journeys. And sometimes, in order to make the case for commissioners or funders, telling that story is also really important. And you meet these women, your organizations meet these women when they are thinking of getting pregnant again, or whether in a subsequent pregnancy. Sandra made a really good point there of saying that communities hold community level trauma because of members of their community having been through something so terrible. So if you're a Black mother whose sister went through something terrible, you're going to be traumatized by that and need that specialist support. So the VCS are meeting women at all parts of that pathway, and it's not about whether they were ill enough or they reached a threshold for us or not. The women who see me benefit from what you do, and the women who can get a therapeutic intervention from another service can benefit from what you do. But from the specialist service end, we absolutely can see that the limitations of what we are capable of delivering compared with the innovation and the speed, the flexibility, the reactive nature, the kindness and the compassion that I see, I'm in awe, frankly. And we have so much to learn. The point Sasha made about us learning together, I absolutely concur with that we have so much to learn from VCS communities, and we are open and willing to share what we have within the statutory mental health end of the pathway. But part of why we have what we have from a specialist service commissioned kind of landscape now is because of what you drove, and what your families drove for us. So we're endlessly grateful for that. So now it's our turn to try and step up and make sure that the services that the VCS delivers are as well valued and evaluated within the system as our services are. So I apologise for answering a different question.
No, I was just going to say, actually, I love the way you flipped that question, because it's actually coming back to the key theme here, which is around an intuitive whole. It's not around segregating parts of that pathway. And although we obviously have to look at everyone's respective role within that pathway, it's really about how, from the point of view of the family, that is a seamless experience and it runs throughout. So thank you so much for answering that question so well. And then finally, I'm going to turn to Anne-Marie. So Anne-Marie, we've seen, and we are testament as a partnership to funders' appetite to support perinatal mental health, which is of course very welcomed. How do you think the perinatal mental health VCS sector can be supported with sustained investment so that we can make long-term plans for growth, particularly at a time when we know the funding landscape is changing now that we're coming out of the pandemic?
Thank you. So it's really positive to hear everyone talking about partnerships and collaboration within the sector, because as funders, that is what we're looking for. So there's kind of two parts to this question, and that is around supporting sustained investment, and the second is the funding landscape coming out of the pandemic. So in terms of sustained investment, at the National Lottery Community Fund, we offer grants of any amount up to 5 years. So for amounts of over £10,000, you can apply through our Reaching Communities or Partnerships programme, and we can support your organisation for up to 5 years. And what we're especially interested in is partnerships, and that's because we've seen that through collaborating and working together with different organisations, that kind of creates the system change. So we're looking for innovative ways of working and working together in different and clever ways. So we, for example, convene relationships so we can connect organisations that are doing similar things that might not have connected before, so that you can collaborate, talk to each other, learn from each other and work together. But also we support and encourage organisations who might not have particular expertise. So, for instance, for the perinatal mental health sector, what you might want to do is work with, say, a mental health charity organisation, and also work with a family organisation who is maybe concerned with babies or families, different parts of the sector essentially coming together and then sharing that expertise, and knowing that you are an expert in one area and a different organisation is an expert in another area. But if you work together, you can pool your resources and encourage each other. So then the second part is around the funding landscape coming out of the pandemic. So for us, as a funder, we encourage organisations to be honest and ask for what you need, because what we've seen is that in the past, often organisations are worried to be honest about their circumstances, and that means that we're not able to fully support, when actually we've seen that a lot of organisations do require core funding. So we do have those opportunities, we do offer that, but in order to support you in the best way possible, we just need honesty so that we can kind of work together and make the best possible links. So to summarise, the sustained investment is around working together in innovative partnerships, pooling resources and expertise, and then also just being honest and having an open conversation and letting us know exactly what you need.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for those practical kind of responses on the funding piece of work. We have got a little bit of time now for the panel. I think this is such a rich discussion. It would be great to take a couple of questions from the chat that people have been putting in as we've been talking. So we may be thinking a little bit on our feet. This is perhaps a question for Sasha. So we've got, with increased NHS investment into peer support services, how can VCS peer support services integrate with the emerging NHS framework for peer support and, again, establish a truly integrated pathway? Would you like to respond to that question?
I would. I've literally been thrown out and I've come back in. So I don't feel fully versed. I caught the end of that question. So
yeah, just to refresh. We know that there's increased NHS investment into peer support services quite specifically. How can VCS peer support services integrate within that emerging NHS framework so that we can ensure a truly integrated pathway?
I think it's about, I think you do it really well. If I'm really, I agree with Jo that a lot of the time that you fly your flag in a much more kind of a much better way than we do. And I think it's about still, signing up to, the clinical governance meetings. It's coming along to all the discussions, the training, showing yourself. Don't hide your light under a bushel, I would say. It's always hard to kind of, when we're doing the work every day, to actually find the time. But I think it's about, as I said, building those relationships. And this is the time to do it. It's not the time to kind of shy away from things. It's to kind of say that this is the work that we're doing. There is a huge amount of expertise. And as I said earlier, I think it's about valuing that expertise. You're not here to fill a gap that health and social care and statutory can't do. You are here to kind of own your space, and I think it's just about kind of showing what you do. Your voice is very powerful. So I'm not sure I kind of answered it very well, but I just think it's just about kind of showing yourself and showing what you're doing and advertising it. Speaking to the commissioners. It's not always about management doing that. It's not about the CEOs doing that. It's about kind of making a name for yourself and people knowing who you are. And as I said, because we're all so busy, it's hard to find the time, but it's kind of the value in doing that makes a huge amount of difference for all the families that you work with.
Thank you, brilliant, thanks a lot. And then
Can I just come in on that one really quickly? Because I tell you why. It's because yesterday somebody said to me that they'd seen a beautiful flyer for a mother and baby forest bathing course near me. It sounded beautiful, based in nature. And it occurred to us that what we haven't got is a framework which says to me, as a lead in a perinatal team, how do we check the governance of that? Really simply, like, what is the framework of sharing the governance so that we can really seamlessly signpost women if that service has got a particular checks and boxes? But I've never seen a good framework for that, and that will be immensely helpful, I think, from both sides.
Yeah, I think governance is a huge thing, and it's something that we've obviously been trying to bring into this kind of the website mapping piece of work, and it's something we've wrestled with, to be honest with, because we don't want to look like we're policing the sector, but we have to show some kind of rigor and robustness when we're signposting parents and we're signposting vulnerable people. So it's a really interesting point that you make there. I don't know if Vicky, if you want to speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that in terms of embedding peer support into the perinatal landscape within the VCS environment, that just make sure, because there are organisations up and down the country that have experience of that, VCS organisations of hosting, of employing peer support workers that also work in partnership with specialist perinatal teams. So it's about reaching out, and that's what part of the partnership is about, so we can support each other. So those that have experience of doing that can share the knowledge, can share the lessons learned really about what makes that successful. So it was just to say to reach out to others.
Okay, great. I'm going to throw this one out to you, to whoever would like to respond. And it's a really good point about the fact that there's a lot of mapping going on at the moment with statutory services and VCS across local areas. How can we avoid duplication, which is one of the reasons why the partnership set up, really, to try and avoid duplication and support other emerging groups. So is there somebody who'd like to respond to the mapping piece to say, how can we make sure we're not all doing our separate mapping exercises?
Well, it's really tough, isn't it? I mean, there is up and down the country, there is a lot of mapping. With our partnership, we've made a start on this. We know we're not going to capture everything, but we just really felt that there was a space, particularly for something very visual, for parents, families, for health professionals to come together, to try and signpost and direct people to safe spaces, to safe services, so they can get the appropriate support in their local area. It is hard work, but we're going to have to see how it goes. But it's not an easy challenge, basically. Don't have a clear answer to that.
It's about joining the dots as well, I think, from conversations that we've all been having in our outreach work. And some of that is anecdotal, some of it's about using more established frameworks to do that, but just making sure we're having that wider conversation on a more coherent level as well. And I think one more question I'm going to take, and this one is for Anne-Marie specifically, a question about commissioning or funding. From a local CIC supporting baby loss. This person is asking, how do I go about having a baby loss support service commissioned, and who do I contact? I'm in Manchester. I know the baby loss community feel this is really needed, and I'm building an evidence base to provide data. I don't know if you could answer that one, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, it's really positive that you're seeing a gap and starting to look at that service, and also building up an evidence base. So in terms of our funding specifically, we at the National Lottery Community Fund, we offer small grants of up to £10,000, and these can be for unincorporated organisations. So all you need is a constitution and 2 directors, and then you can apply for our funding fairly easily. With the application process takes up to about 12 weeks, and then you should get a response. And that can also help you to continue to build up this evidence base, so that then you can go onto our larger grants programme, which I discussed before, which is reaching communities or partnerships, which again will want to see that evidence base that you're building up to show how this service is important and the difference that it's making. And so there's lots of different options available there. Hopefully, if you're at the start of your journey, that will be helpful. And all of the information can be found on our website about that.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much for that practical response to that, and very best of luck to that CIC. Just to say that we have been hosting our conversation spaces quite regularly, and these are the kind of topics that are coming up in discussion, and that's why it's so important that this community enables that sharing among the more emerging and established organisations, so we can all talk to each other about our experiences and make that learning curve slightly less steeper than it is for some people. So I think really that's, looking at the time, going to bring the panel section to a close. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank each of our panellists for presenting today and responding so well to the questions that we put to them. So thank you very much. So now it's time to wrap up our event. We'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. We really hope it's the start of some brilliant new connections and opportunities to collaborate and to continue to shine a light on the wonderful work of the perinatal mental health grassroots community. Please do keep in touch. Take good care. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.